In this video, we will show you how to replace your front brakes. Let's get started. Okay friends, it's time to get started on our job. The first thing you need to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Make sure you have the suspension hanging. After that, you're going to remove all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Now that we have the wheel off of there, let's take one of those lug nuts and put it all the way against the rotor, just holding it in place. Once you have that on there, continue on to removing this. To remove it, you can either use some cutters or some pliers. When you do it, you want to be careful not to damage it, but you do want to grip onto it well enough because it is spring loaded. Give that a quick inspection, make sure it's still reusable. Set it aside. Let's move along to the back side of the caliper. What you'll notice back here is you have 2 areas where you have slider pins. In those areas, you'll also have a plastic cover protecting the area. After you have the covers out of the way, continue on by removing each of the 5mm Allen head slider pins. Give them a quick inspection and set them aside. Now we can remove the caliper from the area. To do this, we'll use a small pry bar. Come in between the caliper and the brake pad and try to give it a little tug. We're trying to push the caliper piston back. Grab onto that caliper, give it a little wiggle, removing it from the vehicle. Now when you turn this over, you're going to have to remove the inboard pad. It has some clips that press into the piston of the caliper itself. To do this, grab onto the caliper and push down on the pad, removing it. Once you have that out of there, you need to inspect the caliper piston area itself. You'll notice it has a rubber protective boot. If you see any tear, wear, or damage on it, you're going to have to replace the caliper. Also, if you see any fluid, it's another sure sign you have to replace it. Now let's use our caliper compression tool. We'll compress the piston. Make sure it goes all the way in. After that, go ahead and set it aside, putting no pressure on your flex hose. Remove your outer brake pad. With the brake pad out of the way, continue on to your 2 15mm caliper bracket bolts. Once you have one of the bolts out of there, give it a quick inspection and start it in just a couple threads. Remove your bracket, give it a quick inspection, set it aside. We'll have to clean this up later. Now we can remove our lug nut and the rotor. The next thing you need to do is clean up the hub mating surface where your brand new brake rotor is going to sit. If you're using any type of cleaner, you want to make sure you have a collection bucket under it so you can recycle it properly. If you've got any rust buildup, use a brush, clean it up. Once you have the mating surface cleaned, continue with some copper never sees. Clean the braking surface on both sides of your brand new rotor. After that, go ahead and put it in place on your wheel hub. Once you have it on there, continue on with one of your lug nuts. Bottom it out, holding the rotor in place. Now it's time to clean all of our mounting hardware. You want to make sure you clean the threads of your caliper bracket mounting bolts and clean and inspect the smooth surfaces on your caliper slider pins. Now we'll move along to cleaning the caliper bracket. This can easily be done with a wire brush. The 4 areas that you want to clean are exactly where the brake pads are going to sit. Now we can take that bracket, we'll set it in place over the rotor, lining up our mounting bolt holes. Take each one of those cleaned mounting bolts and put them in position. Start them in, bottom them out, and then torque them to 98 foot-pounds. Now it's time to move back to the caliper itself. Use your wire brush. Clean up any miscellaneous debris that's in this area. After that, you want to continue by removing your caliper slider boots. For these, typically you can get in between with a screwdriver and gently pry them out of position. After you've cleaned that, you're going to want to clean each of the 2 holes for your slider pin boots. That's easily done with a bore brush. Once you have those cleaned, we're going to continue by putting in our brand new caliper slider pin boots. To slide these in, we're going to take this and crimp it a little bit along the flappy side. Once you have that squeezed, continue on by sliding it up and through the hole. There's one. Make sure it's completely seated. Once you've got that one done, do the same to the other. Now it's time for some high temperature caliper lubricant. Let's go inside of each of these mounting boots. Once you feel as though that's lubricated well, continue on with your slider pins. When you put them in, you want to make sure that the threaded area only comes out a little bit. If you go too far, you're going to have a hard time putting the caliper in the proper position. Continue with the high temperature caliper lubricant and lubricate the metal aspect of the caliper piston and the backside of each of these ears. By adding lubricant here, that helps with vibration dampening and noise reduction. Now it's time to install our brake pads. We're going to do the inboard pad. That's the one that slides into the caliper piston and locks in with these 3 clips. Put it in position and slide the clips up into the caliper piston. Sometimes giving these a little squeeze will help you slide it in. Continue with your outboard pad. Slide it right onto that caliper bracket. Take the caliper and put it in position over the pad and caliper bracket. While you're doing this, pay attention to your flex hose. You want to make sure that it has a bend like this, but it's not necessarily twisted. If it's twisted and looks like this, you're going to have a braking issue. Let's get that lined up and press both of our slider pins into their proper position. Once they're lined up, snug them up by hand and then torque them to 22 foot-pounds. Continue on with your caliper pin covers. Continue on with your locking clip. For the clip, you want to make sure that you have the upper ear making its way along the back side of the bracket here. We'll take the little tab and press it into the caliper hole. And now we can swing this down. It's going to be under spring pressure. Once we spring it down, we'll put this underneath the bracket and then slide this area into its corresponding hole. Give both of the ends with the pins that slide into the caliper a loving bonk. You want to make sure they're completely seated in there so this cannot fall off while you're driving down the road. Okay friends, now we can reinstall our wheel. Once you have it in place, continue on by putting all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts on. Once they're started, bottom them out. We'll get the wheels safely back on the ground and then torque them to 100 foot-pounds. Torqued. Okay friend, we showed you how to do one side of your front brakes. Obviously you want to make sure you make your way over to the other side of the vehicle and do the exact same thing. After that, pump up your brake pedal till it's nice and firm, double check your brake fluid in your master cylinder under the hood, and take it for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.